All right, welcome back. Now let's do the code for the overall program. So right now I have the new ping example up right now, and this is sort of the most complicated of all the scripts. So I'm gonna just do a save as over this, and you could just save it wherever you've been. You could just save this wherever you've been saving your scripts, or just make a new folder for it. And I'm gonna do the same thing, just like the SolidWorks files, and make like rev iterations. I've already got a couple of these. Yours would be rev one, but mine's gonna be project code rev three. Okay. So we did a save as over the new ping example. So we still have the new ping example if we want to reference that back. But this is sort of the most complicated of everything that we're dealing with. So I wanted to just include this as the foundation. So now let's bring in the code for our servo motor. So I'm just gonna put this side by side. So put this on the left side and put my uh, put my servo motor code on the right side, and let's see what we're gonna do here. So I'll do this. All right. Okay. So once again, I don't really know how to code, and I'm gonna use these examples to my advantage and sort of combine everything and copy and paste things to make sure uh, I have a working program for whatever I'm trying to do. So up here, I'm just going to delete this commented portion because we don't need this. And then because we have all these like different sections or like subsystems working together, I'm just going to try and separate them and organize them so it's clear in my mind. So I'll just do like slash slash and I'll do ultrasonic sensor. And then I'll just do a bunch of dashes. So, like really just separate in my head like what's going where. And then I'll make a new portion that's for the servo motor. Do a bunch of dashes. And then I just started copying and pasting. So there's sort of three sections in my mind, right? There's things that go at the top, and then there's void setup, and then there's void loop. So let's see what's at the top for the servo motor program. So if this is void setup, we're going to need everything from here to here. So just copy and paste. That's all we got to do. And then I'll do the same thing in the void setup to just like to separate everything out. So this piece was for the ultrasonic sensor, and this piece was for the servo motor. So that goes here. And let's grab this line from the servo motor and bring that back to our main uh, project file. And let's copy over some code for the void loop for the servo motor. So I went over for loops a bit, and I thought we might have to use them for this project, but actually we don't. And the only thing that we're going to need is this one command that actually does the like telling of the servo motor where it should go. So I'm just going to copy this line over for now. This goes here. And what else do we need? I'm also going to trim the fat for the ultrasonic sensor um, program a bit. We don't really need to communicate to the serial monitor. That was just like as a visual representation for us. So I'm just going to delete these extra lines here. We still need the delay. Whoops. We still need the delay, and we still need the actual this function that's like doing the hard work here. So I'll just delete this extra stuff, the serial print, because we're not going to communicate to the serial monitor anymore. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So right now we've copied everything over that we need for the servo motor and the ultrasonic sensor. And the last thing that we'll need is something for the LEDs. So I'll bring up my whoops. Now I'll bring up my blink example on the right here. And I'll do the same thing as before. Just make a separate section above the void setup. I'll just call it LED. And I'll copy and paste everything that's above the void setup into this portion here. And then I'll do the same thing for within the void setup. Take this guy, copy and paste that there. And then we need the actual code that actually turns it off and on. So we'll do this. Boom. Boom. Just like that. Okay. So now that we have like all of the code that we need to like set up our program, let's make sure that our pins are set to the correct pin numbers. So, because in the individual examples, we set pin numbers, but those are a little bit different than the assembly program, right? So for my assembly project circuit, my trigger pin was 9, and then my echo pin, let's change 8 to 10. And then my LED, we changed to 11 instead of 8. So we'll change that above the void setup. And then down here in the void setup, we made the servo attach 8. So we're good on the pin numbers. And now let's actually get to the actual code. So let's think about what we want to go on here. So basically, every 50 milliseconds, right, the ultrasonic sensor is going to ping, and it's going to grab a distance, and it's going to see what that distance is. And if that distance recognizes that a hand is close, we want the servo motor to go from up all the way to down. So what does that mean for the servo motor? Um, so the servo motor is sort of going to go in this upright position, and then it's going to go down to this closed position. So a servo motor can rotate from 0 to 180 degrees, but I don't think we need that full range. So instead of 0 to 180 degrees, we probably only need 0 to 90, right? And instead of in the example file where it's only going up by 1, and it's doing it slowly, like it's slowly rotating 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 180. We need it to sort of snap. We need it to go quickly to 0 and quickly to 90 degrees. So that's why we don't need the for loop anymore. We basically just have to command the servo to go in one instant to go from 0 degrees to 90 degrees. And that's what this line does. So let's make 2 lines. First one is going to be, instead of position, we're not going to need position anymore. So let's change position to 0. And let's copy and paste this and make another one that's position to 90. So this one was just going to say, okay, slam down to 0 degrees in like as quickly as possible. And then this one is slam down to 90 degrees or slam up to 90 degrees as quickly as possible. So we don't need position anymore. So we can delete that line from up here where we define the variable. All right. So what's next? So I'm also going to go ahead and make a new variable. Just follow along here. You'll understand in a second. I'll explain everything. Under the ultrasonic sensor portion, I'm going to create a new variable called distance. So let's do int distance equals 0, semicolon. So instead of just pinging and not doing anything with that ping, now we're gonna ping the ultrasonic sensor, and it's gonna measure a distance, and then it's gonna take that measurement and assign it to the variable distance. So the way that we do that, if you remember, is we write distance with one equal sign is equal to this ping. So now as soon as this software, or as soon as this Arduino is booted up, it's going to do the void setup. And then once it gets to the void loop, it's going to, every 50 milliseconds. So every 50 milliseconds, the ultrasonic sensor is going to ping. It's going to grab a distance. And then what does it do with that distance? It stores that. What does it do with that value? It stores that value in distance. So let's say we were pinging before and we were getting like 46, right? Let's say we ping once. The ping was 46. Instead of just displaying that on the screen, now we're going to store that value in the variable distance that we created, right? Okay, so now what are we going to do with that? Now I'm going to show you, I showed you a for loop, which was like a powerful tool in programming to get what you want. And now I'm going to show you another tool called an if statement. And these are great. Um, they're very intuitive, and by that I mean like you basically type exactly what you want. So let's do if. So the way you do an if statement is you type if, and then you do open and close parentheses, and then you do open squiggle bracket, close squiggle bracket. If you press enter, it'll form another squiggle bracket automatically, and your parameters go within the parentheses or your arguments, right? So if you remember before from the ultrasonic sensor example, we said that if a hand was close to the ultrasonic sensor, a good measurement for or indication of that was like anywhere from like in between like above 5 and below 20. So that's what this case is going to be. We're going to try and do a scenario in this if statement for if a hand is close. So just stick with me. If distance is greater than, let's say, 5, and the way that you communicate end in this is using double end symbol right next to each other, and distance is less than 20, we can tell it to do something. So these are setting parameters for the if statement. So if the ultrasonic sensor is pinging and it ever gets a value, let's say it gets a value of 15 and it stores that in distance, now if distance is 15, now whatever now distance is within these parameters, and we can tell the software to do something because distance is within these parameters. So what we're going to tell it to do is, now that distance is close, we're going to tell the software to shut the trap door and turn the eyes on. So how do we do that? So I'm pretty sure 0 is going to be the close position. Let's say my servo dot right. So this is going to slam this line of code is going to slam the door shut to the servo equals 0 degree position. So I'll write a comment that just says shut the door so we know. And then we also want to turn on the lights. So how do we turn on the lights? That was this. We send a high voltage. So we can just take this line. I do a control X to cut it. And then we just paste it right here. And we don't need the delay anymore. I'll delete these guys. So let's review. The void loop is occurring, and every 50 milliseconds, the ultrasonic sensor is pinging. It's measuring a distance for how far away something is from the ultrasonic sensor. Now it's taking whatever value it gets, and it's storing that value in the variable that we created, distance. So let's say it's pinging, it's not seeing anything. If you remember from the previous ultrasonic sensor example, a good indication of that was like 47, right? Or like in the 40s. So it's like 45, 46, 47. It's not seeing anything. All of a sudden, it sees a hand approaching, and it sees this ping, the thing that's doing the hard work, is grabbing a 15 because the sensor recognizes that a hand is close. It grabs 15 and assigns it to the variable distance. And now, since distance is 15 and it's within the parameters of our if statement, so we said that distance is 15, which is greater than 5, and it's less than 20. Now whatever is within these brackets can happen now because we've satisfied those parameters. So what we said was that the door is going to shut, so the servo is going to go from the open position down to 0 degrees and shut to the closed position, and the eyes are going to turn on. The eyes are going to turn on because we're sending a high voltage signal to them. So that's one scenario. So this case scenario, let's just write a little comment to ourselves. This is basically what this whole block of code does is, if hand approaches entrance, shut the door and turn on the eyes. That's what this does. Now we need a separate now we need a separate condition for if a hand isn't close to the entrance. So we need two conditions, right? We so far we've made one for if the hand is close, it's going to shut the door and turn on the eyes. Now we need the opposite if no hand is there. That was in the scenario that like the ultrasonic sensor was getting like in the 40s, like the big numbers, you remember? So let's write a separate statement um and something different's going to happen now when the ultrasonic sensor doesn't see something within its limits. Okay. So, the way that we're going to do that is um you could create another if statement, but if you type else if, so now these two if statements are like connected to each other, right? So I'll show you what that means in a second, but basically that means like, okay, if this one isn't satisfied, now it's going to be looking for an else if. So the next else if is like, okay, if this first one isn't satisfied, maybe the else if is satisfied, and then it'll do what's in the else if. If we had two different if statements, they could technically both be true. So basically, if you have like multiple scenarios that are like all occurring within like the same set of scenarios, which is what we want here, you should use one. The first statement will be an if statement, and then the second statement will be an else if statement. And I'll talk about that more in a second. But basically, just know that like if this one doesn't, um, if this occurrence, if these parameters aren't met, now it's going to look for the next else if statement, which is what we have here. So it's the same setup. You do else if parentheses, and then you do open squiggle bracket. You press enter. Another close squiggle bracket occurs. All right. So else if. So what was the other scenario? We were seeing big numbers, right? It was when the ultrasonic sensor saw like in the 40s. So I'll say like else if, I don't know. Let's just give us ourselves a good amount of space. Else if distance is greater than like 35, right? So if distance is greater than 35, we're gonna copy, cut and paste this servo command in, and this is gonna tell the servo door to go to the open position, right? It's gonna open up to 90 degrees. So we'll just do two slashes just to comment and let our brain or to remind ourselves what's going on. This is open the door. And then once the door is open, we'll also want to shut off the LEDs. The LEDs shouldn't be on anymore. So we'll take this and cut and paste it right here. So let's review what's going on and get rid of some of these random spaces here. So there's basically, aside from the setup, which I think you guys understand since we went through the examples, right? In the void loop, there's basically three things that are going on here, right? So the first thing is we're going to, before the program starts, we're going to wait 50 milliseconds. And this is just to make sure that the ultrasonic sensor has enough time to like basically do all the calculations before it sends out another one. It's just like a little break for the ultrasonic sensor. So we wait 50 milliseconds. And then the ultrasonic sensor is pinging out. It's looking for something in front of it, and it's taking back a value, and it's measuring that in centimeters. So it's going to be like 40, let's say there's nothing in front of it, it stores 46 centimeters, right? Now it takes that 46 centimeters and assigns that value to the variable distance that we created. So now within this iteration of the void loop, 46 is stored within distance. So let's say in this scenario, distance is 46 because there's no hand in front of the ultrasonic sensor. So now it's going to look at these if statements and try and perform something. So we said distance was 46, right? So is that within these parameters? These parameters are if distance is above 5 and less than 20. No, that's not true, right? Distance is 46. So it's not gonna this isn't gonna the code within here isn't gonna happen because distance was 46, right? This is greater than 5, less than 20. Our distance is 46. This is not gonna happen. So it's basically just gonna skip this entirely, right? Okay, so now we didn't satisfy this if statement. So now the Arduino brain is gonna look for the next else if statement. So the next else if statement is this one. So what happens next? Our distance was 46. This parameter is any distance above 35. Okay, that parameter is met. So what happens? It's going to execute the code within these brackets, which is open the door and turn the lights off. So now this is satisfied. Let's say for a whole minute there's nothing in front of the ultrasonic sensor. It's going to go through this void loop really quickly. It's going to take a value, put it in distance. Let's say the value keeps being between 40 and 50. It's never going to satisfy this because it's not within the range of 5 and 20. It's going to keep satisfying this one. So the door is going to stay open and the eyes are going to stay off. Now, let's say a hand is approaching, right? A hand is approaching. The ultrasonic sensor sees that and it measures like 15, 14, 12, 19, all within the range of, something being seen, right? Okay, all of a sudden that is stored in the value. That value is assigned to distance. Okay, now all of a sudden this is met, right? So distance is above 5 and below 20. So now it's going to execute the code within this if statement, which is it was open. Now it's going to shut the door. Whoops. It's going to shut the door and the eyes are going to turn on. And because this if statement was satisfied, this one it's not even going to look at this one, right? That's the benefit of using else if instead of two separate if statements. Because this one was satisfied, it's gonna shut the door and turn the eyes on, and then it's not even gonna look at this, and then it's gonna go back and restart the loop again. Okay, let's make sure the distance is still within between 5 and 20. Okay, it is. Boom, we go back here. The servo stays shut and the eyes stay on. This isn't even looked at again, and then this is going to go on forever. And it's going to be a loop. It's going to be constantly checking. Okay, is distance is basically going to always be checking. It's going to take in a value from the ultrasonic sensor. Is it between 5 and 20? Yes. Okay, shut the door, turn on the eyes. If it's not between 5 and 20, it's going to go to the next else if statement, and it's going to say, okay, it's not between 5 and 20. It's probably a bigger number. Is it bigger than 35? Yes. Okay, open the door and turn off the eyes. And that's it. That's the whole software. And just remember, guys, like, I'm not a programmer, right? I don't know a lot about programming. And I was able to use the examples as reference and write my own code to figure out my own project. So you don't have to know a lot about programming to get started. You can use these examples as leverage to create your own projects and sort of cut and paste and sort of try and dissect what's going on in their examples, and then take pieces and components and combine it into an overall project until you get what you want.
All right, so if you did it correctly, whenever I put my finger over the ultrasonic sensor, the light should go on and the servo should turn. Like that. So the ultrasonic sensor is checking. There's no hand in front of the ultrasonic sensor approaching the cave entrance. Oh wait, there's a hand approaching. The door shuts and the eyes turn on. Hand goes away. Everything resets.